Real quick, what I'd like to do now is introduce Rhonda Wright, who is an environmental protection specialist with US EPA's Office of Air Quality Planning and Standards, but all of you know her really as our main OAQPS liaison to the state program. So Rhonda's been a great partner and great advocate for us. So I'm very happy to be able to introduce her today, and she's going to be able to kind of follow up a little bit on Ale's presentation from 2 weeks ago and provide us some additional air quality updates. So Rhonda, if you want to go ahead, welcome.
Hi, thank you everyone. And I do have my colleagues on here as well, Sarah Baker and Tina Endo. I ask that you all please bear with me. My AC unit went out at my home, and so the technician just arrived. And so if I have to step away though, I will turn it over to my colleagues. But thank you everyone for joining. If you could please share my slides. Next slide, please. So I want to start off by giving everyone an overview of some of the program updates that are coming out of our office as it relates to OAQPS, the Small Business Assistance Program. The first update I want to share with you is the manual. I know many of you have been looking for the manual and wondering where the manual is, and we are still in the development process. Just to give you a few ideas of what's been happening. Over the course of last year, as we were developing and implementing the program, the agency our office had to provide or issue out a lot of rulemakings under the presidential executive orders. Therefore, there were a lot of priorities that took precedent over the small business program. And it's not to say that the small business program is not important, but they had to manage priorities. And as a result, a lot of the briefings that we wanted to have last year, we are now currently having. And it's important that we have these briefings, and we have to brief all the way up to our senior management and OAR in order to get the foundation of the direction on how we are to move forward with the Small Business Assistance Program. So the manual has not been sent out to everyone because we wanted to ensure that a lot of the questions that we have been receiving, understanding 507, and we want to make sure that we are clear and we are understanding what is our role and what is it that we are required to do, what is it that we have the authority to do, and we want to make sure that we don't step outside of those boundaries. That being said, in order for us to share with you the manual, we have to have the needed briefings to get final directions from our senior management and OAR in order to move forward, because that will set the course on how that manual will be developed. So as soon as we have those briefings, we will go ahead and finish the manual and get it out to everyone for review. Also, I want to share with you that in the meantime, we have been doing some things as we are implementing our program, and that is the email listserv. We have created an email listserv for the Small Business Assistance Program. And the reason why we've done this is because I am in the Community and Tribal Programs group within the Outreach and Information Division. All these offices within OAQPS. But in our group, the Community and Tribals group, our goal is to build relationships with our stakeholders. And we want to make sure that we are having direct communications with our stakeholders on all of the actions that are coming out of our office that may or may not impact them. And in order to do that, we have to know who our audience is, who is it that we're speaking with, and making sure that everyone has the same opportunity to interact with us directly. And so this email listserv helps us to do that. And so I'm going to plop the address in the chat. And if you would like to join that listserv, I encourage you all to please do so. And right now we are sharing information through the SPEEPS listserv. That is not going to discontinue at this time. Right now, we will continue to share information both through the OAQPS Small Business listserv as well as the SPEEPS listserv. And we will do that for a few months until we get to a point where we will only be emailing through the OAQPS listserv. So I encourage you to share it out because we want to engage not only with our states, but we want to engage with everyone that has small business interests and that have an interest on what's coming in and out of OAQPS. We also are in the process of developing a website. And the purpose for this website is the same thing. We wanted to provide a one-stop shop for everyone to have an opportunity to see all of the things that we're working on, that we're doing to help support small businesses. Those information will include the rulemakings that we believe may have an impact, webinars, trainings, if there's information about SBAR panels, how you can subscribe or unsubscribe to the listserv, all of that information will be provided on the website. When the manual is completed and we have our work group information will be provided on the website. So this website, this page will be a one-stop shop wherein you can go to find out what OAQPS is doing to support small businesses and how you can find information about upcoming events, upcoming rulemakings that you would like to be a part of. Again, this is all our way of ensuring that you have early engagement, not just at the end of the rulemaking, but early engagement, and you know how to get in contact with certain individuals within our office and participate in these events as they become available. Next slide. So as Chris mentioned, a couple of weeks ago, one of our senior managers, Ale Nunes, she provided an opening remarks and she highlighted several rulemakings that are coming out of our agency that we were aware of. So my attempt for the next few minutes is to run through not only those rulemakings that she identified, but as well as some other rulemakings that we think that you may want to be aware of, so that if you want training, if you want any type of outreach on those or more information on those rulemakings, you can reach out to us and reach out to me and I'll see what I can do to assist you with that. The first rulemaking I want to bring to your attention is the Air Emissions Reporting Requirements, also known as the AERR. The AERR requires state and local agencies to collect and submit emissions data to the EPA. Last month, EPA invited small entity representatives, also known as the SERS, to participate in a possible SBAR panel. We believe that we will have to go through an SBAR panel, but I'm saying possible because as we are collecting data and we're running the analysis, if it's later determined that we don't need a panel, then we won't go through with one. But we want to make sure that we get ahead of it and start the process in the event that it is indeed needed. Let me put this note here too. As you're looking at these slides, you will notice that some dates are in red and some dates are in black. All the dates that are in red text, that means they are either court order or under a consent decree. Those dates will most likely not change. Everything else, all the other rules in black text are subject to change. All the dates, rulemakings as well are subject to change. If they're in red, they're under court order or consent decree, and those dates most likely will not change. The next rule I want to bring to your attention is the lead acid battery manufacturing rule. This action will address the agency's review of the area source NESHAP and the new source performance standards, also known as Nsps, for lead acid battery manufacturing. The miscellaneous coating manufacturing, this is an RTR with a court order consent decree signature, final signature for February of next year. This MCM NESHAP does not currently regulate inorganic HAPs. These are your metals that are emitted. This action will propose standards for inorganic HAP consistent with the Clean Air Act requirements for establishing MAC standards. The next rule is the electric arc furnaces, steel plants, Nsps. This action will address the agency's review of the new source performance standards for the standards of performance for steel plants. The next rule is the auto and light duty trucks Nsps. This action will address the agency's review of the new source performance standards for automobile and light duty truck surface coatings operations. The next rule This action, the RICE, NESHAP, and ICE Nsps, this is the electronic reporting amendments. This action will propose to amend the NESHAP for reciprocating internal combustion engines. That's what RICE stands for. The Nsps for stationary compression, ignition, internal combustion. That is what the I stands for, ignition, internal combustion engines. The Nsps for stationary spark ignition, internal combustion engines to add electronic reporting provisions. And the last rule on this slide is the regulatory infrastructure for new HAP additions to Part 63. So if you recall, last year, I believe it was last year, we added a new HAP to the Clean Air Act called 1BP, also known as the 1-bromopropane, 1BP. So this action that we're speaking of now, after we have added that HAP to the Clean Air Act, we are now issuing a regulatory action of the infrastructure for this new HAP being added to the Clean Air Act. So again, on February of actually was this year, February of this year, we added the new HAP, which is the air toxic, to the Clean Air Act, which was the first time we have ever added a HAP to the Clean Air Act since the 1990s was signed. This action will propose amendments to the general provisions of 40 CFR Part 63 to ensure the effective and efficient implementation of requirements triggered by the addition of this new HAP 1BP. 1BP. So 1BP is largely used, if you're not familiar with it, it's largely used in solvent degreasing, adhesives, furniture foam fabrications, and in other applications, including aerospace industries. Next slide. Oh, I'm sorry, not next slide. I think we're still on the same slide. You can go back to one slide. Thank you. The gas distributions and bulk gas terminals. This is under a court order for a proposal of June, which is in the next couple of days, and a final signature of June of next year. This action will propose the results and decisions, the required technology review for both the major and area source gas distribution NESHAPs, as well as the required review of the Nsps for this industry. The next rule is the surface coating and plastic parts for business machines. We're not really sure if this will have any small business impacts, but again, as these slides indicate, these are potential small impacts. So if you are familiar with this and you believe that you may have an interest in your states, then please reach out to us and then we'll look further into it. But this is also under a court order deadline. And this action will propose the results and decisions from the required review of the Nsps in accordance with terms of a consent decree. The EPA intends to propose this action by June 1st of this year and finalize this action by June 1st of next year. The next rule is the major boiler MAT court remand. Past court decisions remanded for further explanation the revised 130 parts per million carbon monoxide emissions limits, and also required changes to standards for certain subcategories of major source boilers. This final action will address the issues that were remanded in the two courts' decision. Next, we'll talk about plywood and wood products, residual risk and technology review. This rule is under a court order for a final signature, but not proposal. We are thinking that in order to meet that final signature of November next year, we will propose in early next year. So for plywood, these facilities include things like lumber, plywood, particle board, medium density fiberboard, hardboard, structural fiberboard, oriented strand board, and engineered wood products manufacture processes. This rule does not regulate all HAP as required by the Clean Air Act. This action will propose the missing standards consistent with the Clean Air Act requirements and establishing MAC standards. And the last rule on this slide is the miscellaneous organic chemical manufacturing. EPA received and granted petitions for reconsiderations of 2 issues, specifically on the use of EPA's IRIS value for ethylene oxide in assessing cancer risk for the source category, and the use of TCEQ risk value for ethylene oxide as an alternative risk value to EPA's IRIS value. In this action, the EPA will finalize decisions related to the petitions for reconsideration. Next slide. The MATS, this is a review of the RTR. And this proposed action will address decisions made in the prior RTR for electric utility steam generating units. The next rule, aerosol coatings. This proposed action will amend the national emission standards for the aerosol coatings, in other words, aerosol spray paints, categories under section 183E of the Clean Air Act. It will amend the coating category product weighted reactivity limits and add compounds and revise reactivity factors. The next rule is the oil and gas supplemental. And I want to take a pause and thank Donovan Grimwood again out of Tennessee for supporting us with that huge training that we held last year in November. Donovan participated on the planning committee to develop that 3-day training for all of our stakeholders, for small businesses, environmental justice communities, and tribal nations. And we're now working on the supplemental of the oil and gas rulemaking. The purpose for this action is to review the existing Nsps and propose new standards as necessary to meet the directives set forth in the executive order. As I mentioned, in November 2021, EPA proposed a rule that will leverage innovative technologies as well as proven cost-effective solutions that major oil and gas producing states and leading companies are already using to minimize or eliminate this harmful pollution. We are continuing to work on a rulemaking, this supplemental rulemaking, to reduce emissions of methane and other harmful pollutions from both new and existing oil and gas operations nationwide. I think I have this rule twice, the AERR, so I'll go to the next one. Paint stripping, surface coating operations at area sources. This is another court order for a final signature of November of this year. Paint stripping operations results in methylene chloride emissions. Auto body refinishing spray applications of coatings used in motor vehicle and mobile equipment surface coatings operations result in target HAP emissions, which include compounds of chromium, lead, magnesium, nickel, and cadmium. EPA has proposed that there are no cost-effective developments that will further reduce air toxins. The agency did not propose amendments to existing emission standards based on the technology review. However, the agency did propose several clarifying updates, including simplifying the exemption process for sources that do not apply coatings containing targeted air toxics, acknowledging that emission standards apply at all times, including during periods of startup and shutdown malfunctions, requiring electronic reporting and other minor technical updates and clarifications. The comment period for the proposed rule closed on January of this year. And as I mentioned, the final rule will be issued prior to November of 1st of this year. MM2A, also known as the major sources and area sources under Section 112 of the Clean Air Act. In 2020, we finalized this rule called the MM2A, or Major MACTA Area. The MM2A rule allows a major source of hazardous air pollutants or air toxics to reclassify to area source status at any time by limiting its emissions and potential to emit hazardous air pollutants to below major source thresholds. MM2A replaced the 1995 once in, always in policy, effective on January 19th of 2021. We have identified the MM2A rule as an action being considered for review under President Biden's Executive Order 13990. Under this review, EPA has appropriate and consistent with the Clean Air Act of Section 112 will publish for notice and comment a proposed rulemaking suspending, revising, and rescinding the MM2A final rule. We're working on this review now. Please note that these may change at some point, but this is where we are as of today. Dry cleaning. Many of you may have participated on a lot of outreach. We did some targeted outreach on dry cleaning last year. And so some of you that are listening now may have participated on those outreach. But this action will address the agency's technology review of the dry cleaning facilities, also known as PERC dry cleaning NESHAP. We propose to require all new and existing PCE dry-to-dry machines to be equipped with refrigerated condensers and carbon absorbers as secondary controls. We are under a court order to issue a rule by December of this year. And just to follow up from our May 12th meeting back when Ale spoke, there was a question in the chat on whether or not the work group worked with TSCA in the development of this rule. And the answer is yes, the work group was already connected and working with TSCA. For site remediation NESHAPs, this is also court order. This action will address exemptions that are currently part of the NESHAP. For the next three rulemakings, lime, rubber tire, and taconite, these are all under a final consent decree that is expected to go final on spring of 2024. We have expected here because they are still in negotiations, but that is what they're aiming for final signature by spring 2024 for all three of these actions. As well, all three of these actions does not currently regulate all HAP as required by the Clean Air Act. These actions will propose the missing standards consistent with the Clean Air Act requirements for establishing MAC standards. And last but not least, the ethylene oxide sterilizers rule. In this action, we propose the second technology review for the NESHAP and assess potential updates to the rule. To aid in this effort, EPA issued an advance notice of proposed rulemaking that solicited comment from stakeholders and signaled the beginning of a small business advocacy review panel process, which was completed in April of last year. Currently, we are continuing our work to develop and propose a rulemaking for ethylene oxide commercial sterilizers, which we expect to issue later of this year. We will be reaching out to communities in advance of that proposal, and we will keep you all posted as that outreach is scheduled. So that is all of the rules that we believe may have small business impacts. Again, we emphasize the term potential because, again, we try to get you engaged in these rulemakings early on in advance. If throughout the rulemaking process, we may later determine that they will not have any small business impacts. But we wanted to bring them to your attention so that as you are working in your states, you may be familiar or may be aware of things that we might not be aware of. And so if there are of interest or further trainings, outreach that are needed on any of these rules that we have identified, then please feel free to reach out to me directly, Rhonda Wright, and I'll put my email address in the chat box, in the chat for your reference. But those are all the rules that we have. Are there any questions? I'm not the rule lead, but if there are any questions, I'll be happy to take those questions back and follow up with you on those responses.
There is one question from Tony for you. It says, Ali rocked my world when she said EPA would propose to repeal MM2A. Is there a website where we can see more about this?
Yes, so the presentations that I provided, they are all hyperlinked to the website, to that rules website. So I believe, Nancy, you can correct me if I'm wrong, if you're going to share those, these slides with the participants. If you do, they are hyperlinked, so you can go straight to the website.
Excellent. I do not see any other questions. Do you, Chris?
No, I do not. I know that Paula's been answering some of the other questions that had come into the chat while she was speaking, but if anybody wants to ask Rhonda another question, we have a second for that. All right. Well, seeing none, Rhonda, I want to thank you for joining us again today. Thank you for everything that you do for the SB EAP programs. I mean, you know, the emails that you send out and all of the updates on things that are going on at the agency, you know, it's very helpful. It keeps us informed and on track, and lets us sort of like take a step back and just think, well, you know, will this rule affect the small businesses that we work with? So thank you so much for, you know, doing that, sharing the information, and joining us today as well.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.